Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior corporate professional from Dubai, UAE, Sonia Wedrychowicz. Sonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Sonia is a partner of McKinsey and Company. She's a driver of digital transformation and change for growth. And she has worked in Poland, Singapore, Malaysia, and the UAE, and in multiple businesses. So, Sonia, before we start talking about digital transformation, tell me about your own amazing journey, which has taken you right to the top of the corporate world.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. So I cannot really comment on the journey before giving you a little bit of a hint from my childhood. I was born in Poland under the communist regime, but since I became like 12 years old, my biggest dream was to travel. And it was very difficult or even impossible at that time because our passports were at the police and we could not leave the country. But I decided my dream will come true. So I decided to go to university to study international trade because I knew that if I study international trade, I'll be signing all the different contracts for Poland, and for sure I will go in order to meet those people abroad.
Right.
So then when I was 20 years old, it was 1989, the Berlin Wall came down and suddenly the world has opened up for us, the Poles, and many other people in Eastern Europe. And the first thing that happened to me, I was invited to go on a few scholarships. And I studied in London, New York, and in Ottawa, Canada.
Wow.
And after I've done that stance, I decided I come back to give back to my country what I have unexpectedly received. And I stayed in Poland for 18 years. Working in Citibank. And then after 18 years, I started traveling and working abroad. So in addition to Malaysia, Singapore, I also work in US, in New York. And then finally, I changed completely my career from banking after 26 years. And now I'm in McKinsey, Dubai.
Amazing, amazing. And if you were to look at this incredible journey that you've had, what would you say are some of your key learnings and some of your key challenges?
Well, the first thing that I learned is that we should always be open for change. Because if we continue doing what we did, we should not expect much more difference and change in our life, right? So I always was waiting, what will happen if I stay where I am versus if I'm open to the opportunity that is coming up. And usually the unknown was for me attractive enough to take a decision to go and change and basically face the challenge. The second thing that I learned is that there is no job that is too big for you. If other people believe that you are good enough to take it, don't hesitate. And I think this is the thing that is usually very characteristic for women who always, for some reason, doubt themselves. So that was the second thing. The third thing that I have realized, and I also learned, is that people are not that different in many different places of the world. You know, I grew up in the Western culture in Europe. Then I moved to Southeast Asia. Then I worked in India and Indonesia for extensive amount of time. I traveled on business to China many, many times. Then I moved again to the Western hemisphere, to US, and now in the Middle East. And I can tell you one thing. The people have a lot of things in common. All of them want to be successful. They want to provide for their family. They want to be supported and appreciated. And they want to grow and get opportunities to develop. And all the other things, all those cultural differences are there. And we need to appreciate them and accommodate and respect them. But at the end of the day, very deep inside, people have very similar aspirations and dreams.
Fascinating, fascinating. So let's now talk a little bit about digital and transformation. It is said that change plus growth equals transformation. What is your own perspective?
I love it. I think that it actually encapsulates what I truly believe in regarding transformation. You cannot do transformation for the sake of doing transformation.
Absolutely.
Because it's a theme of the day, or the other people are doing it, so I need to do it as well. You really need to have a goal. You really need to understand what is the outcome that you would like to achieve from the transformation, whether it's a growth in the customer base or decrease in costs or growth in your income or even the market share, right? So transformation is very important to be driven by the KPIs that you would like to achieve. Without them, it usually lags and people do not know what is the ultimate goal that we would like to achieve. So I always tell to the people who start the transformation is that what would you like to achieve? Because there may be many different things. Some people want to change the culture of the company. Some people want to change, increase the market share. Some people want to basically refresh the product base and make it much more agile and much more customer friendly. So there are many, many different ways the transformations can be made for. But it's important to make it clear so that it can be targeted and then aim for the growth that you would like to achieve.
Fascinating. And tell me a little bit more about the kind of work you are doing in the area of digital transformation.
Well, I am specializing after the stance before I joined McKinsey. I was involved in designing, developing, and implementing a digital-only bank for DBS in Singapore, which I implemented in India, Indonesia, and then to a certain extent also in China. And I did a very big leap in my career, first in Citibank from corporate to consumer, then from consumer into Islamic in Malaysia, and then from traditional banking into digital. So I always believe that looking at the digital transformation through building digital businesses is the encapsulation of all the different things that you can expect. So I'm currently actually involved in building digital businesses in Middle East, supporting the clients here, both in the UAE as well as in Saudi Arabia. But I'm also getting involved in digital business building in Asia as an expert. It's a little bit of a challenge regarding the time difference, but I love working with the people that I know from Southeast Asia. So it's always a pleasure. So I basically build and I launch. That's what I do.
And when you talk of transformation, most senior leaders like status quo. People don't want to change very easily. And when it comes to digital transformation, there is also a lack of understanding. How are you handling some of these challenges with the senior leaders?
I love that question. Of course, everybody is comfortable where they are, and the change is uncomfortable. That's why people do not want to change. They are fearing the change. The change is coming with an unknown, and not everybody is ready to take this on. What I have seen, and this is a very firm statement that I always repeat, is that I've never seen any transformation to succeed that would be bottom up. It needs to be top down. The only transformations that I have seen succeed were driven from the top, usually from the CEO, which in these days, I believe should be called Chief Digital Officer for the bank, because this is the trend that we are seeing across the board, not just in the financial services, but everywhere. And being driven by the CEO, who is then putting the transformation goal and is dissecting it into the KPIs of all the different people that are on the management committee, and making them believe that irrespective whether they're in technology, business, legal, or compliance, they can change the mindset to become digital is one of the things that makes the transformation successful. I've seen it in Singapore. I've seen it in a few banks here in the Middle East. Without that top-down approach, without adjusting the KPIs, the goals, and basically also making sure that they are being tracked on a weekly basis, at least, will never make the transformation successful. I've seen a lot of people trying to do it bottom up, but usually the middle and the senior management, if they're not convinced, that never works.
And when you talk about digital transformation and you say that it should be top down, can you give me an example of where, without of course names, where have been some challenges and where things have worked very well?
So challenges, I tell you, Ashutosh, are always there. And the challenges are related to the fact that it is a myth or a dream that you can change the organization in like no time, okay? Of course, the biggest challenge is that the one person decides to do the transformation, and the other people pretend that they agree, but nothing really works, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about such cases because they're obvious.
Correct.
So what is less obvious is when there is willingness to change, but then there are the barriers and the obstacles, and I could name a few. So one of them is people are very much convinced and attracted to the fact that they have been in the organization for many years, and they believe there is only one way of doing things. And they believe that if that way of doing things was successful in the past, it will be successful in the future.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the big things. The whole statement, it has always been done this way, is the biggest enemy of transformation.
Correct.
And this is what I always fight, and this is what I see. And it requires a lot of maneuvering, a lot of influencing, a lot of inspiring for people to change that mindset. The other thing is regulators. That's another magic word that is giving the people the excuse not to do anything, because the regulators said that it should be done this way, okay? And the reality is that the regulators, yes, they said certain things many years ago. For example, you need to have a signature in order to open an account, okay? That regulation was probably done in the Middle Ages, I think, when we didn't have biometrics, AI, and many other much more reliable technologies that can actually identify us and authenticate us much better than the signature itself, right?
Correct.
So the conversations that I usually had with the regulators were leading us to the spirit of the regulation rather than the letter that might have been already outdated, and led to amazing developments that made the regulators understand that actually there are much more, I would say, technology-driven, much more effective ways of making sure that we are protecting the banking environment.
Amazing. And, there is another aspect of transformation, whether it's transformation or digital transformation. It is the use of technology. Everyone's now talking about Web3. People are talking about artificial intelligence. People are talking of metaverse. And the fintech business, which you are an expert in, seems to be at the forefront of this transformation. I wanted to ask you, how is technology changing the speed or the efforts that are being put in transformation?
I will answer that question with an anecdote from my own life. I have been a business person for majority of my career. I never worked in technology. The first time I really became closer to technology was when we're doing the digital bank, but in Singapore. But I was still a chief operating officer. Of course, I had my technology colleagues very close to me. But one day I was asked by the CEO of the bank to become the head of technology for the biggest market in Singapore. And at the beginning, I was like, why does he think that I can lead technology if I have like zero or very limited knowledge about technology? And then he told me a sentence that stayed with me forever. And he said, these days, I need people who understand how technology can enable business.
Wow.
And I think this is one of those things that I always put forward when people are getting excited with technology itself without really understanding what are the use cases, what does it enable, what do we really get from there, right? People are getting excited about blockchain, AI, and many different things. And that's amazing. But it is very important to understand what is the problem that we are solving for and how we can use the technology the best way in order to make it happen. Therefore, I am a very big proponent to put the business and technology people together and the design people together in one room in order to address the problem that is raised by the customers. Is it an unmet need or a pain point that we would like to address? And those trio, if I can say, or the trio of business, technology, and design can actually solve it the best. Because business knows what they would like to achieve. Technology can enable, and design will make it friendly for the customers.
Fascinating. There is another aspect, Sonia, of transformation, which is culture. And you worked across the whole world in multiple cultures. There are some cultures who will always say that I'm very open to transforming and making a change. And some will say, this is how it has been done here for generations. I'd love to get your thoughts on how does culture impact transformation?
Culture is the elephant in the room. It's a little bit like the air. It's invisible, but it's there. Okay. You cannot touch it, but you cannot live without that. And you are basically really, really impacted by that. So for me, the culture is the most important prerequisite and the reason for transformation to succeed or fail. And people are talking about that. However, I would like to stop talking in general terms, but I would like to talk to you a little bit of how actually can culture be changed, okay? Because everybody, we need to have this culture, people need to be open, this and that, but what does it really mean and how to make it happen? And the only way you can make it happen is by example. And one of the best situations or practices or experiences that I have been through was in Singapore, where the bank that I was working for made the culture change very tangible. It put a slogan that everybody was relating to. The slogan was "Bank less, live more," or "Let's make the banking joyful." And everybody had to relate to that. From the compliance people, not to look at all the barriers possible in order not to deliver things, but actually how to make the banking joyful while being compliant. Through the legal people to open up, how we can provide all those different systems. Through the business people, technology, and everybody else. And then it is also very difficult to change the culture throughout the organization at the same time. So the other thing that I have seen is having a spot, a pot, a group, a best practice excellence center, where all those different practices are being implemented on a smaller scale and then starting radiating to the rest of the organization, especially if that project is successful, is another way to change the culture without a lot of talks, a lot of workshops, a lot of town halls, a lot of emails, but actually making it a reality and a practice of every day.
Fascinating. My next question to you is that in the recent past, can you give me an example of how you have supported leadership in transformation?
Well, quite a lot. Most of my projects are about that. So the interesting thing is that a lot of what I do is related to coaching of the senior leaders on how to navigate in the world of transformation. Why the willingness is in many cases there, when we are being faced with practical challenges and things that we need to decide in a little bit different way, then my role kicks in. So I have a lot of conversations with the leaders on my client side that ask me a lot of questions that are not that straightforward and they are not that, I would say, standard as they used to face in the past. So for example, the non-hierarchy driven organization, okay? Successful transformations usually are characterized by the agile ways of working. And the agile ways of working, by definition, they do not have like 5 different levels about them. And people are working in squads and they can always tell their view, they are closer to the customer. So it's not the CEO anymore that is the wisest person in the room, but these are the people who are actually interacting with the clients, doing the research that actually have the view. So these are a couple of examples on how I'm trying and I'm helping the leaders to navigate, to embrace the new culture where the people who are closer to the client, they are down on the ground, can have a say and can have a very good discussion, not necessarily being filtered by the level of middle and senior management by directly talking to the leaders. So this is one of the biggest things, to tell you the truth, because once that's enabled, it is then opening a lot of opportunities to make the transformation successful and also very fast in nature.
Fantastic. My next question to you is about the pandemic. The pandemic has impacted all businesses all over the world. What, in your opinion, has been the impact of the pandemic on transformation and the digital things that you are doing?
So, Ashutosh, you know that better than me, right? Everything became digital because there was no choice.
Correct.
Personally, I have one, I would say, amazing reflection on the pandemic, and that is, for many years, I was persuading the leaders in different organizations that yes, you can service your customers outside of the branch. Yes, you can have a video conversation on the wealth management with your clients. You do not need to put a red carpet in front of them in order to persuade them and to have a good conversation regarding your investment opportunity. And everybody was saying, it's not possible. I need to hold the hand of the client when I'm talking to them. Otherwise, it's not. And then it became possible because there was no choice. So I think that mindset in the people minds that was only forced in a way by necessity, for me, was one of the big things. The other one, which I also thought was amazing, was the regulators' readiness and acceleration to enable a lot of the changes on the digital side because of necessity again. There were years before certain regulations were put in place, which were driven by technology, but pandemic left no choice. We either do it or we do not have a solution for simple problems. So that was the second thing that I really love. And the third one is the whole enablement of people, and especially women. Suddenly, we as women can have our kids, our home. We don't need to spend 2 or 3 hours or an hour and a half to go to office every day. We can actually manage our life much more efficiently by being able to work remotely, and not necessarily from 9 to 5, but in the hours that are much more convenient for our lifestyle.
Thank you. What a great response. So, Sonia, I've got time for 2 more questions. My next question is that, as someone who understands digital, who understands transformation, what would you say are some of your predictions as you look in your crystal ball on where is the digital economy going?
I think about that a lot. And one of my big reflections, but also frustrations recently, is that everybody is now pushing into digital, but digital is only efficient and it's only really valuable when it works. Okay, so one of the big things that I'm predicting for the future is that a lot of players will be knocked out of the digital space and will be forced to absolutely improve the customer experience and the reliability of the digital journeys that they provide to the customers. Otherwise, they would be out. And I've seen a lot of situations where people are trying to digitalize the journeys, but they are absolutely horrible from the customer perspective. So this is one trend, that things would become easier, intuitive, simpler, and working. So this is one. The second thing, I believe that there is going to be an amazing focus on the cybersecurity, not on only the technology side, but also on the social technique sides. Because while an increased number of people is becoming part of the digital economy, many of them are very vulnerable to the threats that are there. And I think a lot of time, effort, money, and education would go into that to protect the people's well-being, also money, so that they do not trust people who are trying to break in and basically take advantage of the people who do not know. So that's the second one. And then the third one, I truly believe in quantum computing, that for me is one of the big enablers of personalization and advanced data analytics.
Amazing.
There is a thing that is like a duality in us. Yes, on one hand, we are very uncomfortable to provide any data on ourselves. Of course, unconsciously, we are providing a lot of digital footprint every day. But on the other hand, we hate when we are bombarded by the one-size-fits-all type of offers, right? But in order to have the offers that are just for us, we need to let the others know what our preferences are, which are usually based on our, not just declarations, but also behaviors, right? So finding a balance between not giving too much, but at the same time, being able to be given from those different footprints that we are, digital footprints that we are living, the systems, yes, they need to process a lot of data. Quantum computing will be enabling that, and information that will enable us to get what we really need and want, rather than all the random spam that we are getting, would be a big thing for the future.
Amazing. And my last question to you, Sonia, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey and all the vast experience you have across so many different continents and countries, what would you say are 3 lessons or learnings you would want our viewers and listeners to take away?
I'll probably repeat a little bit of what I said in the past.
Sure.
But one thing that I always say, be open to change. I remember when I was transforming a large number of a large bank with a large number of employees who were hesitating to embrace the change. I told them, you've got nothing to lose. By embracing the change, learning about digital, learning about the new ways of working, you are becoming employable, not just here, but also in the industry.
Absolutely.
And the sooner you get it, the better off you are.
You will be, absolutely.
Another story that I had with a friend of mine who was a very traditional banker and just had like 2 kids born recently. And he came to me and said, Sonia, should I switch to digital banking? I should be somewhere there where I was for many years because I'm very comfortable. I told to him, imagine one day when your grandkids will come to you and will ask you, Dad, granddaddy, what have you done in order for the world to look like it does right now? What would you say? You either were with the old crowd or you actually jumped on the bandwagon and made it happen. So I always say, think about the future, think about yourself for the future, and also think about your grandchildren. So that's one. The second thing is, when you are embracing and talking about transformation, always think about your customers. Don't ever think about the technology. Technology is the last. Remember, it enables the business and what we are trying to achieve. Always look at the customer journeys through the customer eyes. So that's the second thing. And the third one is, digital is about people. It's about the customers that we are going to serve. So make those human-centric design really human-centric. Make the customer love you, not just like you, not even hate you. Just forget about the hating. Yes, they need to love you, like they like the social platforms. Why they are spending most of their time on the social platforms? Not because they hate those social platforms, because they love them. And then it's about your employees. It's about the people who are making the transformation happen. You always need to support them, also understand and support the fact that they need to learn and be brought a little bit up the curve in order to be able to perform amazingly. But the willingness is there. So it's in our hands, the leaders, to make it happen.
Fascinating. And on that note, Sonia, and your 3 incredible lessons: always be open to change, think about your customer because the customer comes first, and digital is all about people, be human-centric in your design. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey, which has been so amazing. Thank you for explaining to us in such great detail about transformation, digital. I loved your comment about there is no job that is too big for you. I think that's something you have followed in your own life, and that's such a great and powerful message to all our viewers and listeners. Thank you also for talking to me about some of your views on where you see the digital economy. And it's incredible, in the last 1 week, 4 of my guests have spoken of quantum computing. So that's an area that I need to go and learn a little more on. But thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.